Welcome to Mission Evolution Radio Show with Gwilda Wiyaka, bringing together today's leading experts to uncover ever-deepening spiritual truths and the latest scientific developments in support of the evolution of humankind. For more information on Mission Evolution Radio with Gwilda Wiyaka, visit www.missionevolution.org. And now, here's the host of Mission Evolution, Miss Gwilda Wiyaka.
Is there more to our DNA than we formerly thought? Can we consciously influence its expression? Can DNA activation put us on the evolutionary fast track? Mission Evolution Radio TV show is coming to you around the world on the Exxon Broadcast Network, xzbn.net. With us this hour to explore the concept of 12-strand DNA and its activation is Ruslana Remennikova. Born in Ukraine, Ruslana is a former research scientist for the Fortune 100 ranked company Thermo Fisher Scientific, where she worked with vaccine sciences. In 2016, a leap of faith for a more meaningful life, she left the world of corporate science to later open a sound machine practice while writing her first book. She's the founder of Songbird Science, a research company exploring the intersection of frequency, consciousness, and wellness. Her sound medicine practices has integrated into VCU and MCV healthcare system, where it continues to promote holistic healing and well-being. Ruslana, thank you for joining us on Mission Evolution.
Such a pleasure, Gwilda. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share about our evolution and well-being of the future.
It's certainly up and coming, isn't it? Either that or we're devolved. We don't want to go there, right?
De-evolution is a significant part of my book, and it does play a critical part of our ability to traject forward. But you're right. We want to be able to devolve and evolve with intention.
Intention being a key, right? So your bio says you're a research scientist. What's your educational background?
I studied biology and chemistry as an undergraduate. I was an overachiever, and I was also studying forensic science. I was 3 credits away from triple majoring at the time. And after I graduated, of course, I found and began my career as a research scientist.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to finish off by saying while I was in school, in pharma, I was also doing my graduate program and studied chemistry as well.
My goodness, that's a lot of education. So how did you become interested in DNA activation?
So that's a really wonderful segue into how I've become kind of interested in this message about our 12-stranded DNA. And there's a number of reasons why such an encompassing topic interests me. However, I felt that as much as I can list all of those reasons, in a paradoxingly way, I felt that message actually, an overarching theme, chose me. We chose each other. So with my background in science and passion for positive change and healing, I felt a subtle whisper that beckoned me during the final years of my corporate life. I felt at that point very disconnected from the formulations that I was working on. I felt that the material that I was studying was a lot more ethereal and powerful than we truly, as reductionist scientists, realize. So I was willing enough to surrender to this inspiration that led me to a much more personal endeavor of researching what I believe is the future of our understanding about DNA, and that is called the 12-stranded DNA.
So what is DNA activation? I don't think we all understand that.
DNA activation conventionally in the laboratory is when DNA expresses itself, its ability to um, um, become alive, its ability to become um, significant in terms of action, in terms of physical quality. When we are considering the archetypal form of any physical substance, I'm very interested in the spiritual aspect of DNA, because before DNA existed, similar to how minerals were created, consciousness informed it. Consciousness is what creates matter. And I believe that we all contain ethereal DNA, and that is how we are able to connect to a much higher order, is that the cosmological higher order is able to inform our physical order.
So the DNA you're talking about, moving up to 12 strands. I think we have 2 strands right now, right? That's acknowledged. So you take it from 2-strand DNA up to 12-strand DNA. Those other 10, where do they come from?
I love this question. It's so anticipated. So I want to talk about a little bit about the 12-strand DNA, because I believe this will also answer your question and offer opportunity for more questions. The concept of the 12-strand DNA is built upon the traditional double helix model that was profoundly introduced by Rosalind Franklin in the early 50s. And also James Watson and Francis Crick and Maurice Wilkins were a significant team in discovering the configuration, the shape of the double helix. However, we are about 72 years down the road from this discovery, and researchers, scientists, spiritual, evolutionary, forward-minded thinkers are starting to understand that this DNA molecule that was discovered over 70 years ago is actually more complex than we realize. And so what the 12-stranded DNA concept is introducing is that it's a more complex dodecahedral structure with 12 interwoven strands. Now, that concept has not been scientifically grounded. We are in the works of discovering in the current moment that DNA actually does consist more than 2 strands. And this has been confirmed and verified that there's evidence of it, of the discovery of a stable and healthy human cell that consists of 4 DNA strands.
So this has been scientifically documented and
Yes.
Okay, like under the microscope sort of thing, you can visually see it.
Yes.
Why do we discover it now? Is it because our instrumentation has gotten better?
I believe that, yes, we are starting to have more advanced techniques. Also, there is an overarching realization because our global consciousness is expanding. We're starting to, and there's different reasons for that. More than just the wanting to become more spiritual or energetically advanced, but scientists are starting to realize that DNA, the DNA strand, is more than just a unit that creates protein or is the 2% that is actively expressed in our body. It actually contains a much more significant role, and that is technology storage. It's capacity to store information. And so in the last couple of years, there's been a lot more unraveling of how DNA is capable of storing information. There's a significant issue currently that is very confronting for our human race, and it's technology based. That issue is that there's so much information. There's so much information online and virtually, and we have records of and books of knowledge, and the question becomes, how will we store all of this information? And it's a good question. Um, by the time we are in 2025, we will have over 120 zettabytes of information and available online, and it would take 1,000,000 years with an active fiber cord to access or to be able to assimilate this information. How
Well, we're going to have to leave a cliffhanger because it's time for us to take a station break. But on the other side, I would really like to get into more understanding about 12 strands of DNA. Ruslana and I will return very shortly, so don't go away. This is Mission Evolution, www.missionevolution.org. How many strands does our DNA have anyway? With us this hour discussing the concept of 12-stranded DNA is Ruslana Remennikova, the author of Activating Our 12-Stranded DNA, Secrets of Dodecahedral DNA for Completing Human Evolution. Completing Human Evolution. That's interesting. Ruslana, the name of your book is pretty fascinating. Completing human evolution. Is there really a landing point, a place that we stop, that we have evolved and we've arrived?
That's an excellent question. And the answer actually lies in what the word completing, where the word actually derived from. So completing, play, P-L-E-H, was a Proto-Indo derivation, a Greek Proto-Indo derivation of the word, which means to become. And so in this context, there is no actual destination of any form. So when the book is referring to the word completing, it actually means that we're constantly becoming. And
Now that
so
makes more sense.
yes, and it that is highlighted right at the very beginning, because I know that's a very wonderful question and controversial at the same time.
Absolutely, it is. So we were talking about we have scientifically proven now that there are 4 strands of DNA, but we're still talking 12 strands of DNA and DNA as a information storage rather than just gene expression. So how much does epigenetics play in here?
Epigenetics is a very significant part of our genetic um, contribution and ability to progress forward as a biological being. Um, with the 12-stranded concept, epigenetics is a critical part of that. However, this is a visionary blueprint that we are considering. This is what we are heading towards in the future. Now, that doesn't mean, you know, 5, 6, 7 years. We're talking about time in the future. This is the direction that we're heading towards, just as much as we are starting to unravel what does 4D mean, what does 5D mean? But this is the direction of 4D technically.
So you were mentioning that the DNA expression above the 4 strands, going to 12, which would leave us what, 8 strands, is an energetic expression versus a physical one.
Correct. At this point, we are considering that our genetic activation is going to be significantly mental. So that means that we are healing as a humankind to unravel the potential in our DNA, which will be triggered by our decision, our intention, our ability to emotionally heal at this point in time.
So you're talking about healing. How much does light have to do with this? And there are some scientific studies pointing out that the sun is definitely more active than it's been in a long, long time, or in recorded history sometimes, and that there's, AKA, a lot more light, larger bandwidths of light present, particularly during solar flares and stuff. Is that playing into our opportunity to access and activate the extra strands of DNA?
So what it sounds like your question is you're asking if the external light of our environmental landscaping has significant value in shaping our genetic evolution. Am I understanding this correctly?
Yes. Hmm.
So to consider this question, um, I am more interested in the frequency of our own ability of transforming, of metamorphosing, of evolving with intention. I do believe, because of the electromagnetic field that exists all around, that photons are a significant um, variable in the way our DNA is constantly evolving because of wavelength and frequency. They interlink, and um, they create the field. So I do believe there is a direct influence on our DNA based off of photons. However, I have done more research that is frequency based versus photon based at the moment.
Gotcha. So you mentioned healing. Does our personal damage, emotional damage, spiritual damage inhibit what we can express as far as these new strands of DNA goes?
Yeah, so that's a wonderful question, and I'm so glad that you bring this up. I believe that it's significant to make sure that we are all on the same page with what does the word healing mean? Because healing has a different connotation for each person. When I speak of healing, I don't treat it as if we are um, something is wrong in our bodies or that we're trying to fix anything. I don't have this relationship with the word healing. And I believe that the term is a misnomer in our society. Healing is a direction. Healing is a means to put yourself on a mindful trajectory to achieve the goal that you would like. But to address the second part of your question, there is a significant issue that each one of us carries. And by issue, I mean on a cellular level, and that's grief. We all carry grief. And grief it can be a spiritually wonderful ally, which that's my contribution and um, wanting to share, is that we can ally with this divine force, or we can let it consume us. And when we let it consume us, we're not able to um, carry on the components of healing, because on a cellular level, grief damages. It blankets memories. It causes stress. When we think about the three major diseases and illnesses that kills people, we usually say it's heart disease, it's stroke, or it's diabetes, but actually it's stress. Stress kills. So we need to realize, where does the stress come from? Yes, our external environment is a significant portion of that, but ultimately grief is how we carry the stress around.
Understood. So let's look at this coming from the other direction. When you have set your intention to heal, um, or to activate your DNA. Let's put it that way. Say you decide to go through DNA activation. Will that then bring to the surface the places that we cannot accommodate the wider frequency?
Do you mind reiterating your question in a different
Hmm.
angle?
Yeah, I'll try again. Um, when if we we have these wounds. A lot of them are related to grief, and it's clear into our cellular level. If we try to activate our DNA, does that put pressure on those places that we have unprocessed because it's trying to express more fully?
Yes. So I want to I want to kind of I think that this is a common knowing, but we always forget this. I always forget this in my daily interactions as well, is that um, science has a very linear way of looking at things. When we consider evolution, we have to understand that it's complex. Complexity is what creates evolution. And when we consider, I know what you're saying, and I love that you're considering this because it's a valid concern. We are not actually, we're not taking leaps and bounds to, address a point in our DNA that is going to, significantly ail us or disable us. We have to remember that it's like taking a deep breath in. How significant and subtle is that? The subtlety is the profoundness in how we are able to emotionally expand, because the emotional expansion is where we're able to find soul and cellular expansion as well. So it's not a linear scientific model. What I am proposing is that we have to remember there's actually um, a different number of keys to remember. We're looking at, our ancestral lineages. We're looking at our environmental factors. We're looking at our ability to how to manage grief. We're looking at dream work and being able to um, uh, you know develop a new relationship with what does even frequency mean. There's more, but we ought to consider that this is a very lengthy and subtle process, and we are to celebrate that, to rejoice in that. But everything that we want to evolve into is emotional and it's mental as much as that is physiological. We have to put that at the forefront.
That would make sense. And if we kind of all bogged down there, it's kind of hard to move. It is that wonderful time when we need to take another station break. Ruslana and I will be right back to continue our discussion. So you stay right there. This is Mission Evolution, www.missionevolution.org. DNA, fact or fiction? This is Mission Evolution, missionevolution.org. With us discussing DNA activation is Ruslana Remennikova. Her website, ruslanaremennikova.com. Ruslana, we've been talking about nine, right? No, eight. Yeah, eight strands of our DNA as basically being unseen, esoteric, if you will. How do you know they're there? What's the evidence?
So, as I was mentioning earlier, there is no evidence of them yet. We are propelling in the direction where we are going to explore the DNA as more of a dodecahedral model.
I'm sorry. You've mentioned that before, and is it what do you mean by dodecahedral?
Sure.
How does that relate to DNA?
Yes. Perfect. So, Plato, one of Pythagoras' students, left us with a legacy, with many of them actually, but for this conversation, he left us with the Platonic solids, where he identified 5 different shapes, and each shape has a symbolic or metaphorical meaning. However, each shape has been scientifically and mathematically proven to aid in our ability to understand certain concepts. So in this case, Plato introduced the dodecahedron, which is the symbol of the universe.
Pretty fascinating. So then how does that relate to DNA?
So when I mentioned 4D earlier, the fourth dimension, which we are as a humankind starting to explore, in this context, the Platonic solids, the dodecahedron, is vital, is a key and a tool for us to unravel what the fourth dimension can prove to us about our DNA. And I'd like to really quickly recap the significant discovery of the double helix by Rosalind Franklin's model in 1953, when she founded that the double helix strand, scientifically and chemically, the phosphate groups on the outside of the strand are particularly on the outside of the strand because water has to attach. It complements with DNA. They exist together. So fast forwarding to the now, to how we're going to unravel more about DNA and learn more about water qualities, is that the icosahedron, which is the one of the Platonic solids, is the representation of water as well. And the icosahedron has been geometrically solved to show how water can be symbolized as an icosahedron already. So putting these concepts together, we have learned from physicists and scholars that the dodecahedron, which is the genetic symbol, the universe and genetic symbol, and the icosahedron actually form a dual pair. This is significant.
So they form a dual pair, and again, I'm trying to understand. Okay, so what's this look like when the rubber hits the pavement? Do we sit there and use them as a Mandela to look at to activate something? How do we use this concept?
So in practical terms, the icosahedron and the dodecahedron form a dual pair. And what this means, what does a dual pair even mean? Is that they're able to shape shift into each other. They're able to fit into one and another interconvertibly, actually. And this is significant because it can show how deeply and flexible this genetic concept can be of our DNA. And although we don't have all of the answers yet to what you're asking, what this can show is a profound approach into what this dimension can show us if we decided to test the genetic prototype as a dodecahedron, and assume the water is an icosahedral complex. There was one more thing which I'm forgetting at the moment, but yes, continue.
Okay. Well, so far I have to tell you that's about as clear as mud to me as a lay person. I don't understand how these shapes relate to the DNA, and it's 12 strands instead of 2 to 4. Um, i- let's start out. Is the concept of the 12-strand DNA? It sounds to me like it's just a theory at this point.
It's a theory. There hasn't been any scientific backing of 12 strands yet. However, there is more consideration of this as we continue to unravel how deeply significant the storage technology of it is. And while we still don't understand what is the relevance between the storage and the shape of it, there is a link. We just haven't determined what that link is yet. One thing that I'd like to point out as well, is we know that 2% of our DNA is active. It's expressed. It's how we're able to do our daily functional routines. in parallel, we also know that water, the amount of water that's consumable on this planet is actually 2% as well. There's a mirror to it. So that leaves us with, 97 to 98% of quote unquote what has been called in the past as junk DNA.
I love that. God don't make no junk, right?
Right, that's correct. There's so much to this, but the question we would ask ourselves then, we know that it's not junk anymore. That was just a term that was used in the 70s for non-coding DNA, which I believe is the storage, the technical storage. We can relate the same principle with water. If we know that 2% is how we're able to drink and create water available for all, does that make 97 to 98% of the water not, it would be rendered useless? The answer is no. We just haven't found a way or a means yet to understand it, but we will.
Let's talk about the storage aspect. Maybe that'll make a little more sense here. Um, when we're talking about the DNA's ability to store information, is that how it collects ancestral? There's been more and more indication that we don't just take on the brown eyes or the red hair or the brown hair or whatever, but we also take on emotions, damage, that sort of thing from our ancestry through our DNA. Is that what the storage is doing? Is storing all this information from the ages?
So we know that we carry at least 7 generations of DNA from our ancestors. That
There
is
goes
one.
that native, like there goes that Native American prophecy, right? Until the seventh generation.
That's a big thing to process. Which means that yes, we do take on, certain nuances that we don't even understand or can grasp. One thing that I feel that we don't really realize is that our ability to visualize and remember memories that actually never really happened in our lives before um, is a significant gateway into the activating of our DNA, of unraveling. It is the making of that moment that we're all talking about. Is the genetic activation? I don't know. If have you ever experienced a time when you uh, have a visual that you didn't experience before, but it was emotionally available to you?
I think we all have if we pay attention. Um, so is this the um, passed down feelings from our ancestral line, or are we talking past life here?
It that is a very subjective question. It's hard to even reduce that. I think that there are a number of variables taking place. Yes, there's our DNA. We also have to remember how sensitive our DNA is and how we're able to cognitively have a relationship with our environment while processing our own landscaping. With that, I think that yes, some of it could be memory, heritage or lineage coming through. It could be frequency based of our environment. It could be a telepathic exchange. It could be remote. It could be past life, because I think that is a very significant topic as well. These are all potential gateways to how we're going to be able to evolve and to understand more about this as we become more complex human beings.
Well, we're at that point where it's really close to shifting to another station break. Um, on the other side of the station break, Ruslana, I would really like to get a little bit deeper into whose memories, and can we actually use the memories that were stored in our DNA to come up with information we heretofore did not have? That should be fun. Please stay with us as Ruslana and I continue to explore DNA and evolution. This is Mission Evolution, www.missionevolution.org, and we're coming to you on the X Zone broadcast station, xzbn.net. Activation promote spiritual evolution. This is Mission Evolution, missionevolution.org. We're continuing our discussion with Ruslana Remennikova. Her website, ruslanaremennikova.com. Ruslana, we were trying to unpack, if you will, the storage of information in our DNA. And you had mentioned that it doesn't have to, it comes through our DNA, but it doesn't necessarily all come from our experience. And my question that I'd like to lead this segment with is, okay, so if that's the case, can we consciously access information that's stored in our DNA in order to make use of it?
We can make an attempt to. I believe we can approach our memory healing, which is essentially what DNA activation is a means to unravel and restore memories that we didn't have we didn't feel that we were connected to or have access to in previous years. I think that it's really important. We have a lot of different examples now with practical applications of how DNA is a means to store digital information. So there have been wonderful advancements that have demonstrated how effective DNA is in terms of storing storage. Sorry, I want to say memory and storage, but it's very similar. With there has been constitutional documents that have been stored for years in DNA and have been able to 99.9% been accurately restored using the storage, the capacity in DNA. And that's one of the advantages of using DNA as a conventional storage method, is that DNA can store vast amounts of data in a very compact space, but we can also try to remember this application in our own lives, because we are yes, we are biological beings, and we're much more complex, so that we can use that as a model, but we have to remember we're a lot more complex at the same time.
Well, this all kind of is leaning towards some of the knowledge of the ancients and validating the concept they were saying. So, say for instance, the Choctaw carry the bones of their ancestors, which of course carries their DNA. Right? Anytime they move, they carry the bones of their ancestors. Can you access the DNA from a bone and energetically access the information therein, no matter how old it is?
Yes, yes, you can. There's so many opportunities with DNA that we're able to access. I think that the most significant opportunity for us to develop a real relationship with DNA is more of the primary advantage in talking about this, and it's through frequency. Um, Through the application of frequency, we can begin to have a more mindful relationship with our own DNA and recognize information that we want to unravel about our memories, and also learn more about our environment. And this is really critical for our evolution.
So, let's get down to again nuts and bolts. What does it look like? What does that actually look like? What do you do?
In terms of one's orientation towards frequency,
And DNA. Hmm.
of course.
How do you do that? And we're talking about it, but it's still a mystery to me as to how we achieve this.
Sure, sure. And that's a wonderful question. So we know that sound is the practical modality of frequency. Sound is the carrier of frequency. Um, we are tremendously impacted by sound, and it happens on a cellular level. But before I get there, I want to really highlight that sound is also really significant in our emotional development, because the environment we decide to sink ourselves into, we become that environment. You know, you have different emotional states when you sit in a car that is filled with, let's say, classical music, and then you have a very different body condition and state when you sit into a car that's playing, let's say, reggae music. And I just use these two parallels, but when we become more intentional with our relationship with sound, we are becoming more mindful with our relationship with frequency.
So
Because
the bones are singing to us? I mean,
the bones, the slime mold is singing to us. Dogs and cats are singing to us. Um, you have more discernment with your emotional capabilities in recognizing information.
is it a matter of resonance?
It is a matter of resonance, correct? Yes. Resonance is significant because when we are able to resonate, we're able to emotionally form a bridge with that resonation or with that subject. But if we're not resonating with something, something is off. We're not, we're not in tune, we're not in sync. But that's also information. That's data.
Absolutely. Well, it's that time in the show where I get to ask you, Rosanna, what's your mission?
My mission is, I believe that I am a conduit to unraveling some a lot of unseen principles that our society wants to unravel, but it's about our most inner deep parts of who we are. And I'm a very curious minded person. I am also very motivated by global healing and bringing unification and peace towards helping people understand more about themselves and more about their environment. I am very excited about the opportunity that our kind is starting to recognize that DNA is the future, is the visionary blueprint. So my mission is to bring my knowledge, my passion, and my goals into helping society recognize the significance of our DNA and elevate um, where we want to go with this knowledge, with this dream, with this vision. My goal is to be a conduit to that.
So, if our DNA stores all this information, can we learn to actively use our DNA as a storage rather than our minds and then be able to access it later?
Yes, the answer is yes. We have to remember that it's not just our brain that carries memory. Our brain is simply a tuner. It's a means for the brain to control the whole body. So when we are surrounded, we're 60-70% water, right? So when we are activated by sound or frequency or light, we have the ability, the cellular ability um, to awaken, to stimulate, to be put into a certain state where our bodies are able to recognize information that our DNA wants to tell us. And again, it's that emotional discernment that I was mentioning earlier is the discipline.
So, it goes from the DNA, the resonance with the DNA, and then it's translated by the brain?
It well, the mechanism I'm not 100% sure about the complete mechanism, but I believe that with DNA, we're able to sound is a means to help the hemodynamics of our blood, which changes the blood chemistry. Okay. Sound is also neurological. So yes, sound does impact the brain in terms of entrainment, which we're very well familiar with. Yes.
Well, unfortunately, we're out of time in the entire show. It's been a real pleasure working with you, Ruslana, and thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much, Gwilda.
Our guest this hour has been Ruslana Remennikova, the author of Activating Our 12-Strand DNA, Secrets of Dodecahedral DNA for Completing Human Evolution. To find out more about Ruslana, where you can find her book and all she has to offer, visit her website, ruslanaremennikova.com. This has been Mission Evolution with Gwilda Wiyaka. For more information or to enjoy past archived episodes, visit our website at www.missionevolution.org. Now, we've been sitting here for the past hour trying to make sense of what our DNA is really. Is there really 12 strands versus 2 to 4? What's your take on it? What do you see for the future if it is indeed 12 strands and it can hold information that we can access at will? So please be sure to join us right here this next time, as this show will continue bringing information, resources, and support to our rapidly evolving world.